Hello, everyone. I am here with candidate number 4, Lori Robinson. The situation we have at this moment in time is that due to the inclement weather, the service that she has is not working as well as we'd like it to. And therefore, she's not able to join me in the broadcast studio. And so my hope is that you can hear her. I do have her on speakerphone. And what the plan is that I will try again with her tonight, but we're going to see if it'll work right now with me asking the questions. And I'd like someone in the chat to let me know if you can hear her. If you can't hear her, then, as I mentioned, we will end the broadcast early. I will do a broadcast with her later on, either tonight or tomorrow when her internet service is much better, and we will still post it and you can watch the replay on YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to start off. Like I said, I see that there are 10 viewers at this moment. So I'm hoping that someone in the community can let me know if you can hear her responses to the questions that I'm going to ask. So Lori, there's about 14 questions and you have approximately an hour and a half to respond to the questions. The first question, as typical, is asking you to tell us about yourself, what roles, what responsibilities or experiences and licenses you may hold that have helped you to prepare to be the next principal of Fort River Elementary School.
Okay. Buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Lori Robinson y yo vivo en Springfield, Massachusetts. Llevo 25 años trabajando aquí en Springfield como maestra, también como asistente principal y también como directora del departamento dentro de la escuela. So I said good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Lori Robinson and I live in Springfield and I've been working here for 25 years as a teacher, as a vice principal, and also as a department chair. 16 of my 25 years, I have been in leadership as a vice principal and a department chair. I hold licenses as a teacher, an administrator, a director, a district director, and I have also applied for my superintendent certification.
Okay.
More about me. I've taught in New York, Wilbraham, and Spain for 2 years, and lastly in Springfield for the last 25 years, 16 of which were in leadership, as I said before. So did I cover everything in the question?
I can repeat the question. It just asks what roles, responsibilities, experiences, or license you hold that makes you feel that you are prepared to be the next principal or leader at Fort River.
Okay. Well, I have touched on all areas, well, most of the areas within the district as a teacher, the department chair. I have a license, as I said, as a director, and I did an internship as a director and as an administrator. So I think that I have vast experience to allow me to work into and become the principal of the school, because I've got vast experience and I've got vast knowledge. I also have a large network of people that I could use or to employ to help enhance the experience for me as a principal, but also for the school.
Okay. Thank you very much. Question number 2 says, how will your leadership style influence teacher instruction?
My leadership style is collaborative. I believe that everyone has a voice and that we should all be able to use our voices and express our needs and our desires and our hopes. But the other thing too is that we work together. I believe that when we work together, when we work using the same language, that not the same language meaning the same terms, etc., like that, that it brings a more cohesive environment for the students because there's no confusion. We're all on the same page. We're all looking at the same thing, per se, but within our disciplines. So there's certain vocabulary words that we would use as far as instruction goes, and I think that working with people to develop that would be beneficial to everyone, so that we're moving in the same direction, and that direction is for student achievement. So whatever we can do to support students is the most important thing.
Thank you for that, Lori. Question number 3 says, knowing that there is a pandemic and students and staff are just returning to in-person instruction, what is your vision for a fully thriving school committed to equity, social justice, and the social emotional well-being of students and staff?
I think that first thing is to acknowledge the pandemic and acknowledge the woes that we've had during the pandemic. I'm sorry. Decide and think about, we should come together and address certain things. We'll have to address social and emotional needs, mental and emotional, provide mental and emotional support for both students and staff. Assess what we have and what we don't have, what we've lost in learning, what we've lost even in teaching due to the pandemic, just the way things have changed. I mean, none of the plans that we've seen or none of the plans that we've experienced. I myself went through 2 plans, or almost 3 plans, and every plan was lacking something. So it is how to identify the deficits or the loss, learning loss, and then figure out ways of bridging those gaps. And this has been a tumultuous year. We have heightened awareness of racial injustice and racial inequality, and being able to address these things. There are a lot of issues that these students have gone through, that we as a society have gone through, but as young people especially have gone through, and they're not necessarily equipped to handle them. So it's very important to acknowledge them, share with them as well that we have acknowledged that we've experienced these things, and work on ways to work through them, support them, address their needs, and discover ways to bring people together. And it could be as simple as giving them time to just release, let go, say what it is that they're experiencing. And then as a community, as a group, we work through that, because if one person's experiencing it, someone else is experiencing it. It can be an adult and a child, but it's being able to communicate, having the space to communicate with each other. And then as far as instruction goes, look at different models of instruction, especially now with the gaps, with learning gaps. We have to look at how or what's most important. Should the focus be on coverage of material, or is it better to cover less but have more deep engagement? To cover less but go deeper and stimulate, curiosity, and inspiring and encouraging more learning and piquing your curiosity. And reassessing things, reassessing the purpose of assessment itself. Why are we doing it, or how are we doing it? What are our expected outcomes? And looking at different ways of assessing students and assessing ourselves as well. Just trying to find ways to address all of their needs as best as possible. We have to create means for students to be able to speak, to voice their angst, their lack of understanding of certain things, or their understanding or their interpretation of things. But it's also creating that space for adults too, because there are a lot of things that we ourselves have experienced that we has to come to terms with and examine and understand. So it's creating a space for everything to happen, for people to be able to connect with each other and connect with themselves within a curriculum as well.
Okay. Are you ready for question number 4?
I think so.
Okay. So question number 4 will be very familiar to you. It says, at Fort River, we consider all groups to be critical stakeholders. How would you work effectively with a diverse group of families or caregivers who may have values that differ from yours? How would you get input from groups that have not felt included in school decisions in the past?
Okay. The first thing would be to create a communication, be it through telephone, through the internet, through letters. In some cases, it may be home visits, but it is to create a path of communication. Language may be a barrier. The Amherst area is diverse, it's international. I'm fortunate in that I grew up in a very diverse environment. So I have some understanding of different cultures. And it's learning, it would be learning those cultures and understanding what their values and what the cultural values are and implications are. And speaking with people, getting them, I'm a student of life. I will be a student forever. It's about learning cultures, learning the world, understanding people. So it is working on understanding people and letting them know that it is okay, that it's important that they participate, that they are important to us. You know, we're in a community, we work as a community, we work as a whole, and opening communications however possible. If it's about having meetings, when we have meetings, we can decide on the time. If it works for everyone to have meetings early morning, then we have meetings early morning. If we need to have smaller, like satellite meetings, then we do that. But whatever it is, we work to accommodate as many people as possible and remind them and encourage them to speak because they do have a voice and they are invested. The students are invested in them. They are invested in the students. This is a community where we work together. We have to have some type of cohesiveness. So recognizing differences is a wonderful thing, but also embracing the differences in a positive way is an even better thing. We learn from each other. Our world gets bigger as we learn more from each other.
Okay. Question number 5 says, tell us about a time when you had to make a decision that you knew would be unpopular. What steps did you take prior to making this decision, and how did you handle the pushback, if there were any?
Okay, when I was an administrator in the 7th grade, the school closed, and so they broke the school up into satellites. And what happened was, part of it was that you lost staff. So there were people that were very entrenched in the one thing that they taught. And it couldn't be, with the new situation, it couldn't be the one thing that they taught. We had to expand their offerings. And there was a lot of pushback. I've only taught this for, 20 years or something like that. And I thought about it beforehand, and as things were changing, as transitions were coming, I kept telling people there were going to be changes. I wanted to prepare them. You understand that the schedule that you have now won't necessarily be the schedule that you'll have then. And I'd ask them what else would they be willing to teach? What else would they like to teach? And of course, most of the people didn't want to change anything, but there was not much that I could do about it because we had a limited number of people, and the curriculum still had to be addressed. So I looked for their strengths, spent a lot of time speaking with people, going to classrooms, observing, asking them about what they felt strongest about, and I worked on learning them in order to be able to give them a schedule that would work for them in the sense that they would be accepting of it, but also, most importantly, that would work for the students as well. And it came out to be pretty good. I had an English teacher that I found out was a reading specialist. So I worked with her to create a reading program for the ELL students because we didn't have an ELL teacher in the building. I worked with a science teacher to expand her science offerings, and that worked out well. And then we actually expanded our curriculum a bit for the students so that they learned more and they got to experience more. One, because they were one grade, but also because the teachers had they had more of a chance to express themselves and expand their offerings, to use their expertise.
Okay, you ready for number 6?
Yes.
This is usually a time when I ask the candidates if they'd like to stop and get a sip of water. Are you okay with continuing, or would you like to pause for a second?
No, I'm okay for now.
Okay, great. So number 6 says, what is your ideal discipline policy and how would you develop such a policy?
My ideal policy is something that's fair and just, and equal, but understanding that equity or equal isn't necessarily straight across the board balance. It's understanding the children, but understanding the people that are in front of me as far as how to discipline or what the discipline should be. I think that one thing about discipline that I've seen in the 25 years plus that I've been teaching is that they kind of do discipline across the board as one thing. But, at times there are underlying issues. It could be an issue at home. It could be personal issues. Sometimes, it could be personal issues. It could be a lack of understanding. It could be a cultural issue, a lack of understanding, or something else. And so it is finding out what the problem is before administering across the board discipline. I think that you have to work with people, address the student behaviors, but also work with the student to learn how to work through their conflicts and issues, and create relationships, build relationships with the students, have the students build relationships with each other so that they can voice their frustrations. It's not to say that every disciplinary issue is something that's underlying. Sometimes someone just needs to act up because this is what is happening. We have to deal with those things, but I think understanding the underlying issues sometimes gives us more insight, and there'll still be discipline, but it doesn't have to necessarily be what is across the board. You're allowed to have some creative discipline. If there's a violation against the community, then they pay back the community. Let's just say the kid wrote all over the wall or something like that, or the student wrote all over the wall, then they'd be responsible for cleaning the wall. It's not for anyone else to clean the wall. You made the mess, so you clean it up. If you're leaving your food tray on the table, or you've made a mess with the food, with the food in the cafeteria, then you get a broom and you clean it up. It's about giving back to the community that you violated, and then understanding why you did it. So I want it to be fair. I'd want it to be just, but there's also has to be discipline in it as well.
Okay.
Discipline would be that you pay back the community in one sense, in one case, or if it's something larger, then we have other, excuse me, we have other means or other types of discipline.
Mm-hmm.
But I would look for it to be fair, and I would look for it to be just, and I'd look for it to be educative as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I believe parts of your response to that touches on the next question. So question number 7 says, can you give a specific example of action steps you have taken to implement restorative practices in your prior schools?
Yes. Well, that worked on community building with the students among themselves, but also with the adults. So because it is a community, it's not, we don't have 2 separate communities in the school, it's one community. Students have to understand that, and they have to work and build their community as young people. But as young people, they have to connect with the older community, with the adults, and working on resolving conflicts before they happen. The student is having an issue with the teacher, and the teacher notices the issue. Perhaps they can have a conversation before it turns into something else. You know, Catherine, I see that, you're a little upset about something, or you seem not too engaged. Do you want to talk about it? What's the problem? What's wrong? And it could be that the child just doesn't understand what's happening. Doesn't understand the curriculum, and then sometimes people act up because they don't understand, so this is a way of getting away from it. So if we can avoid the problems before they start, it's much better. We work on resolving the conflict beforehand. We build relationships early on in the beginning so that a student can feel comfortable, at least moderately comfortable, speaking with the teacher ahead of time. Or if the student doesn't feel comfortable themselves, they have a partner in the room that can speak to the teacher and say, Catherine's having some trouble. Can we work together? It's just looking for positive ways to support each other, positive ways to address issues, issues and wrongdoings, and control behaviors personally. Finding different ways of expressing a problem without being destructive to the community.
Okay. Question number 8 says, how ready and equipped are you to address issues of racial justice? Please provide examples of how you engage with this type of work.
So right now we're in a tumultuous time. There's a lot of issues concerning racial justice and injustice, and it's really trying to make sense of it. I think for me, one of the things is listening to students and letting them voice their feelings and their interpretations of it. I'm by no means an expert, and I would actually invite people with better knowledge than I have, with more accurate knowledge than I have, because I would hate to say something that would be misconstrued and turned into something else. But I would invite people that with better knowledge and better experiences to be able to speak with students. When I was in high school, I think it was my freshman year, we had people that came in to talk about drug addiction, drug and alcohol addiction. So they were experts in what they were talking about because they had lived it. And when you have people that may have lived certain racial injustices or ethnic or cultural injustices, they can speak better to it and explain it better to someone maybe on the outside looking in, because we're looking at it and making judgments based on what we believe and what we feel. And I personally would be able to speak somewhat, but I would also ask for the support of people that were better equipped, to invite them in, to have a talk, to have like workshop sessions, even for very large things, have like maybe workshop sessions for kids to learn and to understand why things are happening, and even offer them the opportunity to work on ways to, again, improve and avoid such happenings. I mean, I can share personal experiences, but how far my personal experiences are pale in comparison to what life is like right now. So I would invite people to help the students work through it, and the students and the adults even, because these are very large issues and it's tumultuous and it's destructive to our society as a whole, and it's helping the students work on rebuilding what our society and our culture is.
Okay. Are you ready for the next question?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 9 says, please speak to the importance of art, music, physical ed, tech, and library instruction in our students' education and in our school community.
Art, I think, depends on the type of art that we're talking about. If we're talking about visual arts or theatrical arts, visual arts tell our history. It is before we have art. We've had art before people were writing. We've had art before people were really standing straight. And art tells our history. We see our history through art, through a contemporary lens and through an ancient lens. So art tells our history, and it's important because it's also for students. The ability or the opportunity for students to create art is an outlet because it's a self-expression. And I think that's important, that they again have the ability or the occasion to express themselves and use their voice through a different means, to show themselves in a different way. I was in New York this past weekend, and there was art all over the place, and beautiful murals. Everywhere you looked, there was something. Beautiful murals on the sidewalk, sides of buildings, everything. And I think that's something that children need, or we all need it, to be able to create something, because that creativity, it's a flow, and it's nurturing. I think that's the word that I'll use. It's something that's nurturing. Theater arts, theatrical arts is the same thing. It's, again, the ability to express oneself, to show oneself in a different way. And it's also a means for us to tap into some hidden talents we may or may not have had. Tech, again, is creating. Tech itself is it's art itself. You're creating. All of these things are creative. You're creating something, you're building something, it's your own hands, it's an expression of you, it's something that comes from you, it comes from your heart. The library is like a second home to me. Libraries and bookstores are my favorite places to go. There's so much, and they're so rich, and I don't know, for me it's a solace. I just find it calming to be there in those places. But you have the opportunity, again, to explore. You could never leave your city, but you could travel all over the world. It gives you the opportunity to imagine and to experience. So libraries are very important. They're educational places. We learn, and we have the opportunity to learn. You know, express ourselves or expand our knowledge through the creation of someone else. Art. Did I miss one? Art,
music,
library.
PE, tech, and library.
Art, tech, and library.
So maybe music?
And music. Well, music. Music is, again, I mean, these are all means of self-expression. Music is that, it's a creative outlet. It is a creative outlet. It is a different way of learning. All of these things have an opportunity, have a place in the classroom as well, because we learn through art, we learn through music, you learn different things. We can approach a curriculum differently by incorporating art. By incorporating tech, we can approach learning differently. So as opposed to talking about a prism, we build a prism. And so we see the sides of it and we understand it because it becomes real to us. We learn, working with numbers, tessellations with math, for example. Art is a very strong learning tool. Music is art. All of the arts are very strong learning tools. Theatrical arts, learning to speak, being able to enunciate, being able to project, but also being able to pronounce words. Joe Biden was a stutterer, and he conquered his stuttering by reciting poetry. Amanda Gorman, the poet laureate, she herself had a speech impediment, and it was through the art for both of them that they were able to overcome their difficulties. So art is a huge outlet, but it's also a therapeutic tool as well. Tech is the same thing. It's a large outlet, but it's a therapeutic tool because you have that ability to create. You have an outlet, and you need those outlets in order. I think you need those outlets for survival. I knit, and it's not therapeutic for me because I'm a little. It's not therapeutic for me, but in the end, I've created something and I feel better about it. So it does offer me some therapy after the fact, but not during. But that's my personality. It is that means of letting go, that means of outlet, but it's also of learning. As I said, art tells history. It tells all of our history. From the beginning up until the present, we see our history. No one can imagine, and granted, some paintings are embellished, but no one can imagine what the world was like 200 years ago without having had art. There are no snapshots of 200 years ago. So we use art to see, we use art to learn history. We use art to learn culture.
Okay.
We use art to learn about ourselves and others.
Okay. So now we're at question number 10. And this one should also seem familiar to you. It says, at Fort River, we have 3 district-wide programs. Caminantes, our dual language Spanish-English program. AIMS, a specialized program for students who have high-functioning autism spectrum disorder. Building Blocks, a specialized therapeutic program for students with emotional disabilities who need specific social, emotional, and behavioral supports. Could you please discuss your experience with each of these populations and your experience working with specialized program students?
Okay. As a foreign language teacher, as a Spanish teacher, I've had a lot of experience working with students who spoke other languages in addition to Spanish. Even as an administrator, when we didn't have a teacher that was strictly for ELL, was an ELL teacher. So I come across a lot of, different students with different needs. We had one girl who had been a refugee in Kenya, and then she came over and she did not speak English at all. The only thing that she could say was, "My name is," and say her name. That was a name that was assigned to her because where she came from, they wouldn't have an English name for her. But nonetheless, it was eye-opening to have been around someone that had absolutely no knowledge of the language, and to watch her grow and watch her thrive in the school environment. Because I wanted to know more about her, I would go to class with her every once in a while and sit down and learn with her, and to see how she learned and to understand. As for other children I went to reading classes with some of the other students and watched how they started to understand humor, and humor is probably the most difficult thing to understand in another language. So they started to understand humor and their enjoyment. Yeah, their enjoyment of it. And as a teacher, I've always had students. Yeah, I have. I've always had students from my first year at my current assignment. I've had students that had high functioning autism, and sometimes it was just working through and figuring out ways to make the curriculum accessible to them. I had one student that couldn't keep up with writing and taking notes, so I started making notes for everyone. Sitting down with the students and working with them individually to address whatever it was that they had issues with. I mean, if it's an issue of being able to write quickly or handwriting or spelling, so we would work together to figure out how we could make things work for them, the student and I. I would ask them what do they need, what would be beneficial for them, then I would have to make that happen. So I've had a lot of experience. I used to request students that came from what was called life skills. So because they were perfectly fine in the classroom. They didn't have any, as far as I was concerned, they didn't have any real issues that would prevent them from coming into the classroom. And they were fine with it. And so they were usually my best students because they were very, very focused and dedicated to what they were doing. And we worked together. Again, it's addressing your needs, knowing what their needs are. So if we need to work with writing and spelling, then we sit and work with writing and spelling. And my teaching point and I'm teaching just from a different point in the classroom. It's still working and having everything successful. I've been fortunate. I've always had very good luck and very strong relationships with the students that I've had from the diverse populations. I had a class once where I had 4 students that were from Lynx, which would have been students with high functioning autism. Then I had some more students that had IEPs that had some more cognitive deficits, and this is all in the same classroom. And then I had some students that needed to move at a slower pace. But it is finding what is needed for all of them and working so that everything was working in a way that allowed them to achieve what they needed to achieve and be successful and be content in the classroom, which is the most important thing.
Okay, thank you. Question number 11 says, Caminantes is the dual language program of Fort River. How will you support the mission, staff, families, and curriculum of this program and serve as an ambassador in the larger community?
Well, number one, I've read about the program and I heard about it, and I actually love the program. So that would be the biggest, and I would probably be the biggest ambassador because I think it's something that is very important in our society, in our culture, and in our country. We are a very large country, and we don't support learning second languages as we should. This is a country that was built on immigration. Everyone has an ancestor that originated from somewhere else. Very few people have ancestors that were here in the beginning. So with that, it is embracing cultures, and it's embracing cultures, and how do I say, reviving our country and reviving what this country is about. This is a country that was built on immigration. People came from all over the place to live here, and we have a vast wealth of cultures, language, customs, and we should celebrate those. So if we can have a program that offers dual language, it's a wonderful thing. It's because we are making ourselves more accessible to the world. We're opening the world up to us and bringing the world back to us. Because there's so much to learn from another culture. There's so much to learn about our own culture by studying another culture. By being able to speak another language, we're making the world a smaller place for us. We're making ourselves global citizens. And in the end, that's what we should be. We should be global citizens, not simply a citizen of this country, but a citizen of the world. And perhaps these students will be the ones that will actually achieve world peace.
Thank you.
I would be a big ambassador, and I would tout the program, not only the unique quality of the essence of the unique quality of the program, but it would be something that I would encourage and I would actually want to expand.
Mm-hmm.
I won't interrupt now.
No, I was the one who interrupted you. It's different when we're not in the same broadcast studio to see eye to eye or anything. So for me to take the cues that you're finished, it's hard. So question number 12 says, what thoughts or ideas do you have for bringing a sense of joy, compassion, love, and unity into Fort River Elementary School at the student level, the staff level, and for the whole school?
Excuse me. Again, it is communicating and building relationships, asking people to step outside of themselves, be willing to open up. You know, it is finding a means to share. Let me think. Encouraging dialogue, encouraging communication, encouraging openness, sharing something about ourselves, understanding each other, really working on understanding each other and finding ways of connecting, finding something that we have in common or creating or that we may have in common. It could be as simple as finding common interests, working together, creating maybe micro clubs or something like that, where we can share our expertise and our knowledge. Students have a vast wealth of knowledge as adults do, and it's sharing that and working together that we could just find some harmony and create art, create something that is something that's shared. Like I said, earlier, walking through New York City, there was so much art, and I was in Harlem, in fact. but there is a peace about it, and it's working toward that peace that makes things more cohesive. When we're calm and we're together, when we're on the same page and we're looking at the same thing and we're thinking about the same things, we tend to be more cohesive. When we share ourselves and share our beliefs, we tend to become more cohesive. So that's what I would do. I would work on creating a space for expression and finding things that would be, well, it could be fun and joyful. I mean, it could be something, singing and dancing, having, like I said, small clubs where there's the ability to sing, to dance, to share something, to cook, anything that brings us together and gives us the opportunity to create real relationships and lasting relationships. I think in my bio I said that I still talk to my Spanish teacher from high school. You know, we call each other. I check on her because she lives in Florida now. But I check on her to see that she's okay, and we talk about life. I still go to dance with my dance teacher from high school. So, but it's creating those lasting connections where you develop the love and the joy for what you're doing, but it's also the love and the joy for the people that are in your surround. It's creating a space for them, creating a space for people to express themselves and share. That's it.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you mentioned in your comment that students have a vast wealth of knowledge and adults do too. And that leads us into question number 13, where it says, how would you support Fort River staff to demonstrate their expertise?
I would ask them what their interests were. A simple, what's the word? I can only think of it in Spanish at this point, a simple survey to find out what people's interests are and what they think they're best at. It doesn't have to be academic. So what do you think you're best at and what would you be willing to share? So academically, if you would like to teach quantum physics in elementary school, that's fine. We'd find a way to incorporate the quantum physics into the curriculum. And students have their own knowledge. They're vast. They know more than we can ever know about a lot of things that we don't understand right now as far as society goes. I still don't understand TikTok, but they can explain that to us. We learn from each other. So it's about sharing. I would ask adults what they would like to share. With students, probably not, I wouldn't term it that way, but we do a needs assessment and find out what they like, what they do, and create something that allows them to express themselves, but also adhere to the curriculum. So you can find ways of tying everything to the curriculum. That's a good thing about project-based learning. You can find some ways to tie everything to the curriculum, but at the same time, students are sharing their knowledge, sharing their expertise, and they could possibly involve the adults as well. If there's a larger project, I don't know, like we're in a drought right now, this world is in a drought, finding ways of conserving water, finding ways of creating means or access to water that's not just simply out of a bottle. Doing that investigation, students can work with adults to do that investigation and create a plan for the community itself. But it's working together and just sharing everything that we know. I made a video for a student. She was learning to knit, but she didn't know how to finish things. So I made a video for her to show her how to finish things off. But with knitting, you're teaching numerology. I believe that we can share our knowledge. Just we can share it. We have discussions. We talk about different things, and then you ask someone, "Well, can you explain such and such to me? Can you, like I don't understand new phones." So all of the things that go on with the iPhone, students are they're your best information, your best teachers. So it's encouraging them. It's encouraging communication, and again, it's building relationships. I think it's really about building relationships where you can share what you know, share your expertise and your knowledge.
Are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
All right. So typically at this point, I go back to question number 1 because we have more people viewing the broadcast at this time who may have missed. And although they can always go back and rewind and watch it later on YouTube, I still have been going back to that question number 1. So in keeping with that, question number 1 once again says, please tell us about yourself, what roles, responsibilities, or experiences and licenses you may hold that have helped you prepare to be the next principal at Fort River Elementary.
Okay. Otra vez. My name is Lori Robinson, and I am from Queens, New York. I have worked in the Springfield Public School System for 25 years as a teacher, as an administrator, and as a department chair. 16 of my 25 years have been in leadership as a department chair and a vice principal. I am licensed as a teacher, an administrator, a director, and I've applied for my superintendent certification as well. I've taught in New York, Wilbraham, and Spain for 2 years, and Springfield for the last 25, 16 of which, again, were administrative or in leadership positions. I think what I didn't share with you was my commitment to education or how I became involved in education. My cousin who recently passed was a special education teacher, but she herself was an inspiration because she suffered from sickle cell anemia. She had a stroke at the age of 10. She was homeschooled until high school, and with her homeschooling, she was at grade level. So she entered high school and she went away to college. So she left home, she went to another state to go to college and lived in the dormitory and everything. The big thing about my cousin that I think is most important, and it is part of how I formed my philosophies, is that she was a big believer in educational equity. She was a teacher for special education, but she didn't teach the curriculum that they offered because it was not challenging enough, she felt. So she taught them the standard curriculum rather than less challenging one, because at the end, these students were going to be let out into the world, and the world wasn't going to take into account that their curriculum was different. So she made sure that her students would be able to function in the same world without being underprepared. So it was very important to me because I do the same thing. I am a strong believer in equity, and I don't like to take away from a student. I believe that you're capable of learning. Everyone's capable. Maybe we address it in a different way, but we're all capable of achieving the same thing. Understanding it, working through it, and being able to complete it. The other person that had a strong influence on me is my principal from elementary school. My school was a very small school. Again, it was in Queens, New York. And it was on Jamaica Avenue. If anyone's from New York, it was on Jamaica Avenue in Queens, New York, when they still had the trains, the above ground trains. And it was situated between a furniture store and some other store. I don't remember the store on the other side, with an apartment on top of it, with apartments on top. And it stands out to me because one day when I wasn't paying attention, I was looking out the window and there was a fire next door. So that was the excitement. We had to go down the alley between the two buildings to run out to get away from the fire. But it was a small school, and it was a poor school because the neighborhood was mostly working class people, and they were people from all over. There was probably every nationality in that small area that was there. So we had people from all over the place that came to that school, but they didn't have a lot of money. So part of the way they paid, as I said before, was my principal had parents in the school. They offered services. They volunteered in the school, so he couldn't afford a secretary, perhaps. So this parent would be the secretary, building, making costumes, doing all kinds of things for the school. I remember one parent was played the piano for us. Was a music teacher. So we had a lot of different people, but the thing that was inspirational about it was that we had everything that the New York City public schools had as far as curriculum went. Every book that they had, we had. So there was that creativity and that desire and that drive for us to be the same or have the same opportunities as the larger group had. And she achieved it. I don't know how, but she achieved it. The students that left that school were well prepared, often better prepared than some of the children that were in the larger environment. And she had great impact on the students. For years they would talk about her, they would see her. She lived in the community. They went to the same church. So these are people that helped form me, helped form my mind, my views, and my desires as far as education. And I think I probably would not have gone into education if it weren't for them.
Okay. So the next question says, what is something you have done that you are especially proud of, and it does not have to be work related?
Something that I've done. Well, I'm proud of all my students. I have great students. I'm connected to them, but I haven't done everything. I think most recently, and it was a big deal for me because I was so proud of her. I had a student that when we started out 4 years ago, she was barely coming to class. So I called her grandmother, and her grandmother came, and we had a discussion. So the girl would start coming to class, and so she started coming to class, and she started waning off again. And then she showed up again, and since I teach high school, I've taught high school in Springfield. She showed up again, and she told me that she was pregnant. But more than that, her grandmother told her that while she was in school that she should find someone that she could trust and she could depend on and that would support her. And she chose me. And I was a little taken back because I was like, so what am I supposed to do? I don't know. But I also told her that she should think twice about it because I'm tough and I'm hard. There's things like that. I believe in education. I'm a strong believer in it, and I don't think it should be wasted. And her practices were wasting it. So she agreed to step up and do what needed to be done. Long story short, she had the baby, then the baby became an excuse not to come to school. So I took care of the baby for 2 years while she came to school. She'd bring the baby, I'd teach, I'd hold the baby, she'd go to class. At the end of the day, she'd take the baby, she'd go home. On her graduation day, I held the baby. She graduated. She took the baby. She went home. She's now thriving, and he's thriving. They moved. But I think that's probably something that I'm most proud of, that I actually got her to graduate, helped her through it, and she's working on becoming successful and finding her place.
Thank you for sharing that story. And the last one says, is there anything that you would like the Fort River community to know?
Let's see. Well, one thing is I live where I work. So were I to be chosen to be principal, I would immediately move to Amherst because I believe in being vested in the community in which I'm teaching. So I would be visible, accessible, living with, next to, around, sharing.
Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, Lord, everything is going against me today.
The phone's still working. You're still being broadcasted, so they can hear you too.
Oh, my goodness. So, like I said, I would be part of the community. Like, I live where I work. I don't have more than, I have been fortunate to not have more than a 10-minute commute to my job. I can look out the window and see students all the time. We see each other in the supermarkets everywhere we go. So it's important to me to be part of the community. So that's one thing. I'm not a very talkative person. This is probably the most I've talked in all 2 weeks, but I'm not a very talkative person, but I am accessible. And I like to do things. I like to know people, and I like to learn cultures and learn about people. I travel a lot. I like to share. And what else can I say? I lived in Spain for 2 years, and I'm the type of person that immerses myself in a culture. I didn't live as an American. I lived as a Spaniard would live. My first semester, I made the mistake of living with an American, and it's not that I'm anti-American, but my roommate was just a terrible roommate. So I moved in with a different group of people. We were 5 women in the apartment. How did it go? 3 were Spaniards, 1 was Danish, and then there was me, the American. So we learned each other's cultures, foods, everything, but I lived like a Spaniard for 2 years, and I taught, and I like to be part of my community and part of my culture. I do things within the community to help better lives of other people, or just whatever community service that there is. So I'm very much dedicated to the people in my area and my surround. I have, like I said, I was born in Jamaica, Queens, and Queens is probably the most culturally diverse of all the 5 boroughs in New York City. I'm a graduate of Miss Porter School in Farmington, Connecticut. I'm a graduate of the University of Massachusetts at Amherst as an out-of-state student. And I graduated from NYU with my master's. And my master's degree was in the role of the dictator in the modern novel, in the modern Hispanic novel. But I say this because that eclectic and diverse experience that I've had both in and out the classroom, both as a student and teacher, has made me like sponge-like and sensitive to communities to which I've been exposed, and hungry to learn more about, about them while ensuring equity for all cultures and ethnicities, regardless of age, status, or class. I told my students today that in my lifetime, I knew 2 people that were over 100. And that was astonishing to them. But it was also to explain to them that age doesn't separate us. When I'm 16 years old and I'm talking to someone that's 100 years old, and we can find common ground, age doesn't separate us. We separate ourselves when we don't have to. So, kind of an open book.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us this evening, and we wish you well and thanks again for sharing your experiences as to why you believe you'd be the next principal or best principal for the Fort River community. So I know with the technical difficulties, many might want to have an opportunity to at least see you live and in the broadcast. So what I'm going to do is ask Sasha, the assistant to the superintendent, to schedule another StreamYard, possibly for tomorrow, so that maybe you can respond to 1 or 2 more of these questions, and the audience gets to see you live. And that'll be posted also and available for the families of the Fort River community to be able to see you. Okay?
Okay, thank you very much, and I do apologize for the internet issues.
It's not you, it's not your issues. So, things happen with technology right now. Everyone's, learning it or struggling with it or having difficulties with it in some way, shape, or form. So we're sure that, the next time you're able to meet with us, they'll be able to see you via the StreamYard platform too. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So thank you again for being here, and you take care.
Thank you, for the community. Thank you, everyone, for listening to me.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
And for the community, I just want to remind you that via the email where you had the links for these 4 live stream opportunities, there's also a link for you to decide who you'd like to see as the next principal of Fort River. So please go back to that email and click on the link to put your vote in and let your voice be heard as to who you'd like to see move forward to the superintendent. Thank you again for joining me in all 4 of these forums. And please remember that you can always go back and review and watch these meetings again. Thank you. And all of you stay healthy and well. Thank you.